Hello and welcome to this week's lecture. I actually think it'll be a short lecture this week. We're going to talk about audiobooks, ebooks, periodicals, and a little bit about interactive apps. These are all different forms. None of these are a particular genre, but different forms that reading can come in. And I do include audiobooks in reading. So some of the benefits of audiobooks, I like audiobooks now because I drive an hour each way to work, and it's a really great way to keep up with my reading and to keep myself from getting bored. And I really look forward to that time in the car where I'm hearing a great story. But some of the other benefits besides being great for when you're traveling are that students benefit by getting an enhanced vocabulary, additional fluency, and listening skills. So the vocabulary comes from having somebody read to them. And as we know that read alouds are good for younger students, they continue to be good for all ages. And continuing to read aloud sometimes becomes difficult in the classroom, but an audiobook is a great way to continue this as students get older. You can also use audiobooks to have students follow along, and I'll show you a couple interactive apps that do that. Follow along and have the words read to them, so they're making the connection between the sound of the words and what is what's on the page. But the vocabulary increases because you do increase your vocabulary based on what you hear as well as what you read without hearing. Fluency will be improved because they will know how to pronounce the words by listening to them. Some of what I have read about the amount of words that children hear from 0 to school depends on how much they're talked to. So being talked to, being read out loud to, listening to things, all of these add to the, there's a shocking number of words that there's a difference between in different students, how many words they might have heard by the time they get to school. And the more words they've heard, the better. So, and this is a continued benefit as students are in school and continue. So I do think that audiobooks are reading and not just cheating. It can, like I said, a listening component and reading instruction can help boost achievement, improves an attitude towards reading because if you're enjoying something, enjoying the act of storytelling, the engagement that comes from storytelling, then we can move that towards different forms of reading, whether that be magazines or books or ebooks or whatever. The other thing it gives is an access to complex literature. If you have a student who cannot decipher the words to keep up with the class in terms of what you're reading, let them listen to the audiobook. They can understand the literature and talk about the literature, and you can work on the reading also as you go along. So it gives an access to complexity that is just not available when somebody's really struggling with deciphering the words. And this could be because it could be great for somebody who has limited vision or no vision. It could be great for somebody with dyslexia who is, having trouble with reading the words, because processing the reading. Just somebody who has not had enough practice reading. And so it gives that access to complex literature that they might, through sounding out the words very carefully, they're so busy trying to read, they don't understand anything or absorb anything. So it's a great way to provide another outlet for access to literature. And like I said, it's reading aloud. We all enjoy reading aloud and storytelling, and I still enjoy it. At my age, everybody enjoys, not everybody. Some people don't process well orally, so it may be something they can't focus on. So there may be people that, if they're visual learners, the audiobooks just don't work for them. And I have to be driving in order to pay attention to an audiobook. It's the only way, by having another part of my brain engaged. That's how I can pay attention to the audiobook. If I'm just sitting still and listening or doing something around the house. For some reason, that just doesn't work for me. I want to let you know about this great thing called Audiobook Sync. It's starting April 26th. I think I have to change that inner thing. I think I said April 27th. Every year for 13 weeks, beginning the 26th, anybody who's a student or an educator can go to this website. You need to have Overdrive. You can have it on your phone, which is great for students because if they don't have any other way to access audiobooks, they can download these right to their phone and listen off their phone. So each week, for 1 week, you have you can download. The first week is The Great War, which I'm really looking forward to. It sounds interesting. And A Study in Charlotte. They try to do 2 books that are on a similar theme. These are for older students. It says teens 13 and up. Some of the books are more adult. I'm looking forward to Solo by Kwame Alexander. So you can look through all of the books that they offer all summer, being jazz. I'm looking forward to listening to that. What I do, I don't get through all of these. You can only download them for the 1 week. And then after that week, they're gone, and the next 2 books are up to download. Once you've downloaded them, though, you have them. So I still have some on my phone that I haven't gotten to from last year. Obviously not as excited about, they just weren't ones that I was excited about listening to, or I would have listened to them already. But this is a great thing to share with teachers in your building because it can bring, get them reading some more current material and get their, they can catch up with their reading over the summer by listening. And also with your teens, of course, if you have high school students 13 and up, or your own kids if your kids are that age. So it's a really wonderful program. Ebooks and interactive books. So first, actually, an sort of interactive book, an online book, is this Inanimate Alice, which is not opening. It did open for me before. Let's see if it's there we go. So Inanimate Alice is kind of an interesting amalgamation of book and interactive app and learning, and it has various episodes. So it uses images, text, and sound. And it has various episodes that you can read through. The earlier episodes are a little easier, and it gets more involved as you go on. So it starts with, it's the story of Alice, and students can read at their own pace. And here, my dad was supposed to be home from his trip 2 days ago. We've been waiting for him to phone. And here you've got some images, so we have video in there. He goes by himself, so you're starting to get the backstory, but you also have images which can engage students, kind of like picture book. Some of us never grow out of picture books. I like nonfiction books that include pictures of what I'm reading about. So you go through and there's things to read and images to look at. So photos. This goes back. So I think it's an interesting but odd thing. But it's something to be aware of, that some books are going in that direction. And it's gotten, and I think, an award for AASL Best Website. This one is the International Children's Digital Library, and basically it's ebooks in various languages. So it's useful, especially if you have languages that are not as easily found, that you can't find the books for in those languages. You can offer this. It's free. You don't need to sign up. You don't need to pay anything for it. And you can choose a bunch of different books, different ages. Don't have a lot of teen books, I don't think, but I like how they've sorted these into covers, which, you know, the classic question is, I read a book 15 years ago and the cover was red. So they've rather interestingly entered the covers there. Kid characters, so they have different categories here of books that you can scroll through, and you can search in all of these languages what books they have in all of these languages. So let's see what they have about animals. Let's see what dog in Cornish. See if they have anything. No books found. So I might just search for Cornish and see what comes up. So here's the featured books. Maybe I guess you have to do some kind of search. This is a terrible search. Okay, so let's just go, here's a book in Hebrew, and you can read the book online. So you just click on, I think I'm probably clicking the wrong way. It probably starts at the back because Hebrew is, I think, a right to left language. There should be a directional arrow, although I guess if you're reading Hebrew, you would know that. So there's instructions on reading the library. You can open an account. I'm not sure what privileges that give you, but it is a useful resource for when you're looking for books for students like in Persian, that you might not have a lot of books that are available. And this one's from 1383. There's some interesting, but it was selected title of the Bratislava Biennial of Illustration, so it must have good illustrations. Oh, that's gorgeous illustrations. Wow, look at that, that's beautiful. So that's a database that would be interesting to explore. This is kind of a interactive app from Smithsonian, and it's basically a forensic mystery, and you can go through it, and on each page, why is it not clicking? Why is it not starting? Oh, here we go. On the pages, there's different things like a click to an article, link to an article. There's a website, images. So here they're talking about the pipes. Images out of the screen, but let's move it over so you can see that they're talking about what they're talking about in actual images, not just the illustration. So I think it's also a mystery. It's not letting me go. So it's not a kind of a fun book for reading, but it does give you some information as you go along if you're looking to do what's the shovel test pit in a archaeological dig. So it's just another area that you can just explore with students. And then there's Tumble Books. You have to pay for Tumble Books. I'm accessing this through my public library. I'm not sure. I think there are some parts of it that are free, but I've signed in with my library card here just to give you an idea of what's available through Tumble Books. It's interesting. They even have graphic novels. You can read them online. So it's another way for students to access material, particularly if they have a device, but they don't, you know, they might not be able to, they might not have access to books or be able to bring books home for whatever reason, but they can access the Tumble Books and access the books from home. So chapter member, page menu, and there's a lot of different ages. I went to this one. Is it going to let me go back? I want to go back. Sorry, I hope I don't get. Oh, there we go. So you have read-alongs. Oh, this is the read-alongs if you have students having trouble with reading. This is one way to have them read along. And is this the one where they actually? There's one where it reads to you, and I'm not doing a very good job finding those. I thought this was it. Storybooks, maybe Storybooks is where you can. One of them, as soon as they went in, it started reading to me. Okay, yes.
Lister and Lester were identical twins who did identical things.
Okay, so it's
When
reading
Lister
to you.
joined the track team, Lester came running.
Okay, so that way you can see kids get an opportunity to read along with the books. It's like the audio book. We used to have and truthfully, I don't know if libraries still have these anymore. We used to have these plastic bags where you'd have the book and a cassette tape in it, which, as I said, cassette tape, I realized that's why we don't have them. For a while, they went to DVDs, and they'd be picture books, but you could put the cassette tape in the cassette player, and the kids could read along and have this little ting when you turn the page. I don't know if they're even still a thing right now, but you can do something similar without the paper book in Tumble Books. Spot, I have a link to this. It's really a cool thing by David Weissner, and the reason I have this is because the story is that he had this idea for a book, but he couldn't figure out how to do it until he was able to work with Apple, and you download it onto an iPad, and because on an iPad you can expand use your fingers on a touch screen to expand or to make smaller. You'd go and I put a little clip of the ad for this, but you start with a cookie and you go into the chocolate chip, and in the chocolate chip there's a town, and then you look farther in the town and it leads to another scene, and there would have been no way to do this in a regular picture book. He had all this art, but he couldn't figure out how to make it work until he worked with the Apple developers and created this interactive app, which I think is really cool. So some things to think about for ebooks. What device do your students have to use an ebook on, and what works? My home library now uses 3M Cloud. They used to use they used to use something else that worked with Kindle for audiobooks and ebooks. I switched to this 3M, which does not work with a Paperwhite Kindle. It only works with the Kindle Fire, I think, and which annoyed me because I wanted to use it with my Paperwhite Kindle because I want to have one device that's just dedicated to reading. So you have to do a run around. I think even on the Kindle Fire, I think you can do it on the Kindle Fire because you can download the app on the Kindle Fire. But the old one used to interface with Kindle, all of the Kindles, even the old ones. So you have to think about what devices does the interface with. Can you use it on all, across platforms? Can you use it on an Apple phone and an Android phone and an iPad and, a Chromebook or whatever? And so you need to think about when you talk to the vendor. And there's many vendors that offer some packages of ebooks, whether they be from a particular publisher or a particular group of ebooks. So you have to think about, does that work for what your students need? Do students prefer print or ebooks? Sometimes some research suggests that students still prefer print in many cases, and they're not as thrilled with ebooks. And to do with the with which vendor, which books are available. Is it going to be your new books that students want to check out, or are they just putting together a package of older books that are not available? And is there single or simultaneous access? Is there a way that you can use the ebooks for a whole classroom if everybody's reading the same novel? Or is it just it's checked out, once one person checks it out, then it's gone? So these are questions to think about when you're looking at ebook programs. So, the cost, the convenience, how much does it cost for what you're getting, convenience, and display and browsing. I always find it in thinking about going completely to ebooks, I always find it much harder to browse for what I want in an ebook or an online venue than I do in person. I think about it in terms of trying on clothes. Like if it's something that's, I need something that's a basic item that I know what I want, like a t-shirt that fits, you know, like with sayings. Okay, that's easy to order online. But you have to be more careful when ordering a dress online, unless you really know what uh, uh, yeah, not for, like if you're an A-line, or if you're a, what am I looking for, the word, that which style fits you best and looks best on you. And even then it might not be made right. So there's something about being in person and trying on certain clothing that makes a difference. And I think about that with books, because what do I do when I'm in a library or bookstore? I pull it out, I look at the front cover, I look at the back cover, I'll open it, maybe read the first few lines, and it's harder to do. It takes more time, I think, to look at um, pages of books that load the cover, and then I have to click in and read more about it, than it does browsing through a library full of books that I can just see what catches my eye and pull it off the shelf and take a quick look. That's just my take on why it can be hard, I think, for kids to pick ebooks. I have a Kindle. If I know what I want to read because I've read something about it, and I know I'm not going to want the hard copy, then I'll put it on my Kindle. Or if I'm traveling, I always load up my Kindle so that I don't have to carry as many books. It used to be, once upon a time, that, you know, one suitcase was for all the books on vacation and one suitcase was for clothes, and the book suitcase was bigger. But now I still bring some print books, because I can't go on vacation without print books. But I also bring a Kindle to back me up, so I don't have to bring as big a suitcase of books. But it's something to think about as you think about libraries and what kind of format you want your library in, to think about how students are going to use print and how they're going to use ebooks. Periodicals. I don't mention here, but I do in the, going back to ebooks, I do mention in the tab this week, there's a free program that I don't know how much longer it's going to be free for Title I students. There's certain criteria that you need to meet in order to be able to have it in your school, but it's worth taking a look at to see. And it's all ebooks, and it's all new. It's current bestsellers, new books. The federal government worked with several big publishers and developed this website in order to bring reading to students who didn't have a lot of ability to afford books or didn't have access to books. So like I said, I think any IEP student can get it, and then there's certain Title I schools. I have it on the tab, but it's something to look into. The only problem is that managing the licenses can be a pain, because you have to apply for a bunch of licenses and then give them out to the individual students. But it could be a worthwhile way of expanding your library if you're in a Title I school without, and I think it's Title I. Look, I have the exact things on the tab for this week, but it can be a great way to expand your library. Periodicals. Stone Soup is really interesting because it's written by and for kids age 8 to 13. So if you have kids that are writing and looking for a place, writing or illustrating and looking for a place to share their work, this is a great magazine to keep in mind. All of these magazines now have, almost all of them have great web pages associated with them too. It used to be you just got the magazine. National Geo for Kids is great, and they also have extra information here, so they have quizzes here and a lot of different Playcats memories. So the websites have become robust also. Ranger Rick has been around forever. Used to get this for my kids, but again, the cute little animal facts, photo contests, and in addition to the paper magazine that you can order for your schools. Highlights is classic, it's been around forever, and they have for younger and older students. They don't have as much, I don't think, on their website, or I may be in the wrong place. there's puzzles. You can go to puzzles, but they're still pretty paper. Okay. Cricket Media has a ton of different magazines for different ages, Baby Bug, Ladybug, Click, and then they have Dig, which is great for archaeological and anthropology, I guess. Muse, which supports science. Cobblestone, which supports history. And Faces, this is a great magazine. These are great because from Dig on out, you can keep these for a while because they do a topic and explore the topic in the throughout that issue, and then go on to another issue in the next one. So you can see that you can keep these on the shelf for a longer period of time and still be useful as a research. Kids Discover, another good magazine. Again, they do topics, so I think you can go back and order these titles because they're topics that are fairly ageless, although things do change, but it does give you can get, if you know that this is going to be an issue that will be used by a lot of students because it's a topic that is being explored, that would be a good, you can go in and buy a package of them and have them to use for a classroom. A package to American Girl is a classic magazine. Goes along with the dolls, but they also is a fun magazine for kids to look at. Sports Illustrated for kids, for your sports people. Again, the website also contains a lot of information. Some of these websites, I'm not sure which ones, if you get the magazine, you might also have access to more content on the website. Make is a magazine that came out of the Maker movement, so for a little older, and talks. Maker Faire was one of the early instances of the idea of making and having a place where all people came together and talked about making and displayed what they were making. So it was in the Bay Area, and that was that was an early big thing. And this magazine, Make, has been around for a while and there's also material content on the website. But if you have a makerspace, or if you have students who are interested in making, who are a little bit older, although I don't know what the age group for this is, it's a good magazine. Teen Vogue has been getting very political and has really broken a lot of interesting stories. It's shifting towards focusing on social issues and politics and other things. It became, as politics has become more interesting in the past several years, and you put interesting in quotes, Teen Vogue, which they say had been shifting towards in the direction of following politics and social issues, has really come into its own as a place where to explore those issues. So it's really interesting. Teen Vogue, and I think there's another teen one, but the idea is there's a lot of periodicals, and sometimes students will pick up periodicals before they'll pick up a book. If you have readers who are struggling, they might enjoy reading these, and I think that we need to, it's important to recognize this as reading, even though there's a lot of images. It's like a graphic novel. The images and the text go together and can help students practice their reading and get engaged in reading. And in addition to just engaging students, there's also some of the magazines I pointed out to you that can also be used for research for various projects that your schools might be doing. So they can be an interesting addition to a classroom. Could also be a nice gift for somebody to give the library that's not too expensive, and you can have them out without too much processing. Generally what people do is put the first one doesn't circulate, so it's there for people to read, and then the back issues circulate, and you can do some kind of temporary barcode to let them go out, and then you can give them away as they get older. But that's today's lecture, and we'll see you on the discussion board.